time, it's the European Union. The EU Parliament will take up 6 resolutions for debate and voting on the 29th of this month, and 5 of them are extremely critical of the Citizenship Amendment Act passed recently by the Indian Parliament. The largest group among the parties that have moved the resolution says the law could have serious impact on India's international image and internal stability. Indian sources have been quoted as saying essentially that this is an internal law, so nobody's concerned. A wire agency earlier this evening quoted sources from the French government as seeming to be backing the Indian government's position. Now, the resolutions in the EU Parliament follow concerns raised by the US CIRF, US Commission of Religious Freedom. 2 House resolutions have also been tabled in the US Congress. None of these so far have had any major impact. In the sense, diplomatic and trade relations between the US and India or EU and India are business as usual. These are mostly individual elected representatives putting across their point of view. But there's no denying that global scrutiny is rising of 2 contentious laws that India has passed, the CAA and of course the abrogation of Article 370. That continues. To discuss more on this, I am joined today by Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador to Canada and South Korea, Suhasini Haider, diplomatic editor of The Hindu, and Manoj Joshi, distinguished fellow at ORF. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Suhasini, let me start by getting your perspective. So far, no official statement, as far as I've seen, from the Indian government. Is that expected shortly? How do you think, the Ministry of External Affairs will respond?
I think the Ministry of External Affairs has chosen to stay silent, at least for the last 5 days since these resolutions were tabled, simply because the diplomacy they are undertaking is behind the scenes. There was a source-based a statement made yesterday, which has been widely distributed, which you might have seen, which essentially urges the EU Parliament to rethink its resolutions, and said that no other parliament should really be looking at a law that has been passed in another government, in another parliament's jurisdiction. So I assume that the government has decided to make keep its diplomacy quiet until the discussion on Wednesday and then the outcome, which is expected to be the voting on Thursday. I do also want to say, Tamanna, that you had mentioned that 5 of the 6 were critical. In fact, all 6 of the resolutions that have been tabled are quite critical. The 6th, which you're possibly referring to, is the ECR group's resolution that does not straight away reject the CAA. It says it understands the reasons for the CAA, but it's extremely critical of what it calls a brutal crackdown by the police on anti-CAA protesters. So I don't think any of those resolutions, in fact, is non-critical of the government.
Okay, fair point. And you're right. I'm referring to the one which seems to have, I would say, a more moderate line. But there is a trouble there with the wording. From the point of view of the Indian government right now, Vishnu Prakash, should the Indian government care or bother about this? How should we tackle this? Can we keep ignoring, elected representatives in the US and the EU who question what we do?
Well, I don't speak for the Indian government any longer, but let's talk about the EU plans, what they are planning. Frankly, and I need to say that the EU Parliament should in fact be called the endless pontificatory parliament. They have nothing, they are overpaid and underworked. So this is what they keep doing, interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. I have through you 2 simple questions for the great EU Parliament. What happened when Turkey wanted to be a member of EU? What have they been doing about it? We all know the reasons why Turkey has not been admitted. When there was the Syrian crisis, where was the EU Parliament? So this is very selective. They pick up causes which with little understanding, and they begin highlighting it.
Okay.
This is purely an internal matter, and we will do what. I would also like to add here that there is not one European country which can have which has 20% of the population as minorities and has the track record of India with the size of India. So they can continue doing what we are doing. I think if there is something to be done, we will do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We are not, I don't think we are overly concerned or should be overly concerned.
I'm not sure where the
by
reference
what EU,
to the number of minorities in India comes, because the official line is that the CAA has nothing to do with Indian minorities. So I'm not quite sure how it's connected or, you know, what reference you're talking to. CAA has nothing to do with Indian minorities, with Indian Muslims.
Tamanna, the reason I mentioned is that the subtext, we can play around with words. The subtext is very, very clear.
That's the official government
what they
line.
are talking about. So it is, I'm going. That I don't represent the government. This is my take, and I am presenting my take on that, because if this is how I see it.
Okay, Manoj Joshi, let me come in, and you know, very strong and strident words there from Ambassador Prakash, saying that the EU really has nothing better to do. They need to maybe self-reflect on, because immigration is a huge issue across the European Union as well. My question is from the Indian perspective and the way we need to handle this going forward. While a lot of people watching this, maybe a lot of people in government, in the MEA may be thinking that, you know, who are these parties to tell us what to do? The fact is that they're going to have to handle it more diplomatically face to face, isn't it? There's going to have to be a lot more explanation going on.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem with our diplomacy is arrogance. They think that others have to accept what we have to say, and we are so big, we are so superior, that our message is the right message. Whereas the task of diplomacy is that even when you are giving a bad message, and let me assure you, the CAA is a bad message. NRC is a bad message. Your task as a diplomat is to try to convince the others that your bad message is actually a good one. Our problem is supreme arrogance. So European Union doesn't matter. Come on. I mean, the European Union is the world's biggest economic area. And when the majority, meaning they have apparently 521 members of the European Parliament who are associated with these resolutions, the total of the European Parliament 626, I think. Yeah. 521 people are involved in this. Right and left, both the blocs, Christian Democrats, Socialists, Greens, everyone is involved in this. The guys who are not, the guys who have a slightly different message are just 66. Many, you mentioned the people who support the CAA but are against the violence. Whatever it is, the most important thing is the European Parliament may not be the greatest thing in the world. The European Parliament may not have authority. The issue is that India is suffering reputational damage. And this is something which is very difficult to recover, in the sense, as it is often said in Hindi, that, you know, एक सफेद कपड़े में सफेद कुर्ते में कीचड़ फेंकना आसान है. You can it's very easy to soil a clean kurta. It's very difficult to show that it's white.
Yes, Ambassador Prakash wants to respond to you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you, Tamanna. Last I heard, we are an independent country, and we have been an independent country for 70 years. I don't take a clue or a cue from 595 or 580 members or whatever it is. I take a cue from the Parliament of India. So, you know, we don't need to roll over and play dead and say that, you know, you, Mr. European Parliament, you know what is good for India. So either we choose to say, before passing a legislation, go to Parliament X, Y, Z the world over and say, sir, please tell us what's good for us, or we take decisions in national interest. I would rather, with all humility, take decisions in national interest by my own parliament. Thank you, Tamanna.
Okay. Okay, so Hasni Heather wants to come in. Remember,
could I just bring in,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I don't think there is any doubt, if you have read those 6 resolutions, that they are gross interference in India's internal affairs. You know, if you read those resolutions, you will see, you know, there are references to UN Security Council resolutions. There are references to saying, you know, repeal your own laws. And you know, hold your policemen accountable on international
Yeah.
accounts. And I don't think there's a doubt about that. But I do want to make the point that it is the government of India that gave these MEPs, these members of European Parliament, a certain extra status when they invited them to Jammu and Kashmir at a time when even Indian parliamentarians were not being allowed up to Jammu and Kashmir. That's when the government decided to invite these 27 MEPs and took them up there. The Prime Minister met them, the NSA hosted them, the External Affairs Minister hosted them. The question is, if you gave them that kind of status, that their opinion counts so much, it becomes a little difficult for the government now to say, we don't absolutely care what you think.
Okay.
I think it would have been better had they not done that. It would have been easier today for the Ministry of External Affairs and for our diplomats to bat on the front foot, as Mr. Prakash says, and say, I'm sorry, we reject what your parliament has to say about what our parliament
Yeah,
has
so that's a very good point, and let's make a couple of things clear. It is nobody's case that you know, the European Union's Parliament tells the nation of India what to do, or that US Congress tells India what to do. This is a law that has been passed by Parliament. A lot of people do have a problem with it. Let me come to the second part of it. You know, these resolutions, and some of them asking the government of the day to take cognizance of protests and saying, talk to them, think about what to do. And I get your point, Suhasini. I mean, it is gross interference to tell another country what to do. But then why did we take these guys to Jammu and Kashmir? Why did we, you know, sort of show them our version of what was going on, and now we say we don't really care what you think? Vishnu Prakash, you want to come in on that?
Well, there is no contradiction, Tamanna. It was not, technically speaking and strictly speaking, it was not government of India. It was a private NGO which organized that. Certainly, they had gone there, the EU parliamentarians, government of India, senior officials, political leaders, presented a viewpoint. They wanted to know what is going on. What's wrong with that? Now, then, if the EU, that was an initiative taken, because we are certainly wanting to explain, not explain, but kind of elaborate what the effort is. We are a member of the Committee of Nations. We want to do that. But then there are certain rules, norms, and in international affairs and international relations.
Yes.
I mean, if we were to start doing that every time we were to comment on what is happening in EU, I mean, or every country starts doing that, I think will be a big price to pay.
Yeah.
And let's also face it, Britain, one of the reasons why Britain has left, or the Brexit has happened, is the same EU Parliament or European Parliament, which has been kind of endlessly debating things, creating a whole maze of rules, regulations, and complicating life for any and everybody. So their role needs to be reviewed. They need to understand that getting into the affairs of other countries is not the best way forward.
No, absolutely. No sovereign nation wants interference. The question is, how does it matter, and does it really matter? Mr. Manoj Joshi, you talked about a reputational damage. Now, that is something that can be debated both ways, and is subjective at the end of the day. Is there any real impact of these resolutions? What can come out of it?
No, I think I made it very clear. When you say reputational damage, it's impossible to quantify what reputational damage is all about. But I would like to state one thing. All those people who are arguing for total sovereignty, that we are completely sovereign nation, no one can interfere in our internal affairs, they've forgotten, they haven't read the UN Charter, for one thing. We have all surrendered certain sovereign rights to the UN Charter. we have committed ourselves to other UN regulations. Today, in the 21st century, to argue that we have certain sovereign rights, these are internal affairs, no one else can argue on this. I think it's very unfortunate that a democratic country should put forward that argument, because the point is, it's all right for China. In Xinjiang, you set up camps, you detain people, authoritarian regime. But for a democratic country to say, no, we have the sovereign right to do what we want, our parliament has agreed with this, etc., etc.
Yeah,
I'm afraid
we haven't
that's
officially
simply
said
not
anything.
That's simply not
All said and
international
done,
law. Neither
our diplomats are smart. They haven't officially said anything. This was sources-based take, which was put out on Sunday. We'll wait and see what the official line is and whether it's as strident as we're assuming. Meanwhile, on this show on Friday, we talked about American billionaire George Soros questioning, the policies of the Modi government. We have seen a democracy index which has put India down 10 notches. And one of our panelists talked about reputational damage. India is too great a country with a few views to damage us, but if the world is asking questions, I think it's time the government does sit up and take notice and listen. Brushing away everyone might not be the solution which anyone will suggest. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the debate this evening.